The fated Sunday arrived. I rode my bike to the station front at 9 a.m., just like I had the day previous. And just like the previous day, everyone else was already there, so we visited the cafe on my dime and drew lots, whereupon Nagato and I were once again grouped together. Nagato would never forget anything I said to her. I knew I could trust her. It was a lesson I needed to learn myself, honestly. For Nagato more than anyone, I wanted to keep every promise I made her, even if it killed me. That's how much she'd done for me. I was mindful of the time we spent at the cafe, and though Haruhi was even more carefree than she'd been before, I didn't have time to worry about that. She'd been this way ever since the treasure hunt, so she must have felt physically unwell during her bad mood early in the month. It was strange to see Haruhi grinning and whispering something to Asahina's ear, wherever she said. It made Asahina smile brightly. I wanted to know what it was, but in my case, Koizumi and Nagato were their usual selves, so it didn't seem like any cataclysms were imminent. I slurped the phone that remained at the bottom of my mostly empty cup of espresso as Haruhi slid the check over to me and stood up. It was 10 o'clock on the dot. There was plenty of time to walk over to the river. We were to meet up back at noon, which gave me more than enough time to go put the turtle in the river and return. I watched Haruhi, Koizumi, and Asahina recede into the distance. "Sorry," I said to Nagato. "Would you mind going to the library on your own? I should be able to come and get you in an hour." "I see," Nagato answered, drawing her duffel coat hood up, which completely hid her head. "Nagato, do you know what it is that Asahina and I are doing?" "Something necessary," Nagato murmured as she began to walk down the road that would take her to the library. "Necessary for who?" "For you and Mikuru Asahina." "Not for her? Not for Haruhi or Koizumi?" I asked. Nagato continued to silently walk. Eventually I heard her voice from within her hood. "That possibility exists. It is still unclear." From where I stood, I could see her shoulders slacken, whereupon she suddenly turned and fixed my face in her crystalline pupils. "However," her hair shifted in the wind, "it will become clear soon, in which case I will move, as will Itsuki Koizumi." Nagato's short, declarative speaking style had always been that way ever since I met her. "Our direction is the same, mine and yours." Having seemingly reached a conclusion, Nagato turned and began to walk quietly away. This time, I didn't follow her. "Thanks, Nagato." Embarrassment made my voice slow. I didn't know whether the receding hooded figure could hear me or not, but I was certain she understood my feelings. Nagato was certainly clever enough to do that much. Along the way, I'd figure something else out. That Nagato, Koizumi, Asahina, and I were all jointly and mutually responsible. In the center shone the brilliant star known as Haruhi, and we were all the planets that orbited around her. I didn't know how long it had been that way, but if Mars and Venus were to suddenly disappear from the night sky, not only would it be rather sad, it would be a big problem for astrologers, and for me. Until we knew with total certainty that Martians and Venusians didn't exist, I didn't want to make them just up and disappear. There are a lot of things that you take for granted until they're gone. Like lead for your mechanical pencil when you're in the middle of a test. Okay, that was a stupid example, but in any case, I didn't want to feel the terrible sense of loss I'd felt last December ever again. Nagato taught me something again. She taught me that the path I should take had been long since decided. Half an hour later, I arrived at the riverbank. The abnormal, autumnly blooming cherry blossoms were nowhere to be seen. There were only bare brown branches, waiting frigidly for spring's arrival. As I made my way to the bench, I looked down to the river, which was at a low ebb. It was a typical raised bed river, with a distance of maybe 3 meters between the bank and the surface of the water. Thanks to the prudent construction of the dikes on either side, the river had a tidy feel to it. With only a few centimeters of water at the bottom, the river was low, but it was still very pleasant. Come summer, there would be children chasing wildly after the small fish it contained, but here at the dead of winter, none wanted to approach the frigid flow. That may or may not have been the reason, but in any case, the bench where Asahina had once confessed her true identity as a time traveler was unoccupied. Despite it being Sunday, there weren't many people who wanted to take a nice riverside walk when it was this cold out, so the tree-lined path was nearly deserted. There was one bored-looking dog being silently walked by its shivering owner, but that was it. Just as I was listening to the babble of the flowing water and really playing the part of the lonely high school lad to the hilt, my clever reverie was interrupted. "Kyon!" Having descended the stairs that led from the roadside, Asahina stepped into the riverbank. She was indeed carrying the turtle's container, but had forgotten to wear the flu mask from yesterday. But with her knit cap and shawl, she still gave off a very different impression from the usual Asahina look, so I suppose it was alright. This would be the last day, anyway. Asahina faced me and waved, then looked back over my shoulder on the road. When I looked, I saw that there must have been a car from the Tsudiya estate driving away. It was a fancy domestic auto, every inch the wealthy family's second car. We'd have to make sure to thank the driver. It was 10:44 a.m. Once I walked to the river's edge with Asahina, it was 10:45. Perfect timing.
The water looks so cold.
Asahina looked down at the lazily flowing river, then held the case that contained the turtle up to her eye level.
I wonder if the turtle will be able to grow up healthy.
My petite older classmate showed kindness to even the smallest animal.
Just wait a moment.
She placed the case on the ground and opened the lid, then produced the box of feed from her coat pocket. The pond turtle cranked its neck up towards the suddenly vanished roof. Then, when Asahina brought the feed closer, it gulped the treat down in a single bite. It had gotten quite fond of her in a single night. That was Asahina for you. I felt bad separating the two of them, but soon the time will be upon us. There are only 3 minutes to go until 10:50. We'll come again in the spring, I said soothingly as I picked up the pond turtle. Unconcerned, the turtle sat quietly in the palm of my hand. I'm sure we'll be able to see him again once he's gotten bigger. That's all I could say, though I had no reason to believe it was true. I shook up Asahina's worried gaze, wound up for the throw, just as I leaned back in preparation for my underhand toss.
Excuse me?
I heard a sudden voice from behind me and suddenly wound up tumbling into the river, still holding the turtle. I tottered and stumbled, but managed to steady myself on the dry ground, whereupon I immediately turned around.
Thank you so much for helping me.
It was a young boy wearing glasses, his voice youthful and his head politely bowed. It was the same boy I saved from being killed in a traffic accident a month earlier, and nearby whom Haruhi lived and occasionally served as his tutor. Asahina seemed surprised. I certainly was. I never thought we'd meet again.
What are you doing?
The boy's features were very different from my sister's, sharp and intelligent. He looked at Asahina and me, and at the turtle I held. Just as I was about to tell him that there was a question we should be asking him.
I'm on my way to cram school,
he said clearly, before I had the chance to ask. He indicated the book bag over his shoulder.
I always come this way. That's what I was doing that day too.
He bowed again, then looked confusedly down at the case on the ground, then at the now struggling shelled reptile in my hand.
Are you gonna let that turtle go?
Yeah, I answered, feeling freshly guilty. Both Asahina and the boy seemed to overflow with sympathy for the turtle as they looked at it. I felt their wordless appeal. Why do we have to throw this poor little turtle into a freezing river? But there wasn't anything I can do. I had to do this. My watch indicated 1 minute to go. I couldn't just stand there doing nothing. I racked my slow-witted brain for some kind of solution. Hey kid, are pets allowed in your house? I mean, would your parents be okay if you came home with this little guy? The boy pushed his glasses up.
I think so. If I took care of him, I mean.
I see. Hang on a sec. Still holding the turtle by its back, I crouched down beside the river. With 3 meters separating the riverbank where we were from the water's surface, the distance wasn't too far. The current was weak, so I wouldn't lose sight of the turtle. I gave the turtle a gentle toss, like tossing a feather, trying to keep the impact from being too forceful. The turtle fell into the river with a plop, leaving behind a series of concentric ripples that moved lazily downriver. The boy watched the scene as though holding his breath. Having sunk, the turtle seemed to kick off the river bottom, then stuck his head out. He almost looked bewildered at the ripples he was causing as he floated along. After a short time, he started swimming, and finally he climbed atop a rock and stuck his neck out. He didn't really seem like he was saying goodbye to us, more likely he was marveling at his turtleish way of his suddenly expanded world. The ripples he made were washed away, but the turtle remained. I didn't know what Asahina the Elder had anticipated, but her instructions only went as far as throwing the turtle in the river, which meant that when I did that, I could do whatever I wanted with the turtle after that. That's what I kept telling myself as I removed my shoes and my socks. Once I rolled up the legs of my pants, I was ready to go. And as Asahina and the boy watched wide-eyed, I climbed down from the bank. The water was just as cold as it looked, and from the bottom was coated in some kind of slimy, mossy substance that did not feel good. But I'd played in many a stream with my cousins in the countryside when I was little, so this was nothing. Sorry about that, little guy. The pond turtle lifted its head up. He didn't try to escape when I brought my hand near, and I was easily able to retrieve him. For the turtle's part, he probably wanted to ask why the hell I threw him in the river if I was just going to get in and fetch him back. Fortunately, I had no facility in turtleese. Holding him in one hand, I climbed back into the bank. By the time I put the turtle back in its case, the chill had crept from my feet all the way up to my neck. Ugh, I was gonna have stomach trouble later, I could tell. I sat down and lifted my feet into the air to shake off the excess water. Alright, kid. Turtle's yours.
Can I really have it?
The boy asked hesitantly. He'd seen everything I'd done.
I mean, didn't you have a reason for throwing this turtle into the river?
I was no better equipped than the turtle himself to satisfy this childish curiosity. After all, even I didn't understand what the hell I was doing. Don't worry about that, I said. I don't think the turtle really wanted to get tossed into a freezing river in the middle of winter. If you take care of him, I think he'd like that a lot better. I wondered about Asahina. She said the directions in this letter absolutely had to be followed, but nothing I'd done went against them. I was a little worried about it, but then I saw Asahina gently handing the box of food to the boy.
Take this too. It's turtle food.
Then, sounding big sisterish,
Make sure you take good care of him. Promise? I promise.
He was a little bit of a brat, but he didn't seem like a bad kid. He hugged the turtle case and feed box tightly.
I'll always take good care of him,
he said sincerely. More sincerely than he needed to show, honestly. Oh, hey kid, promise me one more thing. I had to make sure of one thing. I'd been careless last time, and it almost been a disaster. The memory still echoed in my mind. There's a Haruhi Suzumiya who lives close to you, right?
Yes, Haruhi's always taking care of me. She's like my big sister.
The words big sister sounded very strange in the context of Haruhi. You gotta keep this a secret from Haruhi, got that? You can't tell her that you saw me or Asahina, the bunny lady, and you can't tell her we gave you the turtle. Can you promise me that?
I promise.
The boy nodded, his face serious. Well, that was one thing I didn't have to worry about anymore.
Are you sure you're gonna be able to take him home?
Asahina piped up.
Your parents won't tell you not to take things from strangers? It'll be okay. I'll just tell them something else.
The boy straightened.
I'll tell them that some people were doing some experiments on the turtle, and they didn't need him anymore, so they were gonna throw him away. But I happened to pass by and felt sorry for him, so they let me have him. That's what I'll say. My folks will definitely let me keep him.
The kid had his business together. My little sister could have stood to learn a thing or two from him. They were the same age, but there was a huge difference. I guess it came down to the environment.
I have to get to cram school now, so I'll be going.
The boy bowed dutifully. Asahina laid the palm of her hand on his head.
Don't forget the promise you made before. Be careful of cars. Make sure you don't get any accidents, and make sure to study hard. If you do, I'm sure you'll grow up to be an important person, one whom everyone will remember for a very long time.
Asahina extended her little finger, at which the boy showed a bashfulness appropriate to his age. He hesitantly hooked his little finger around hers, thus completing a pinky promise. Seeing the two of them with their linked pinkies was ridiculously adorable. The joy ticklish pulled his pinky away, then, holding the turtle case as though it was his most precious treasure, walked off, occasionally looking over his shoulder and dipping his head in a bow. Asahina waved to him until he vanished from sight, and I completely dried my feet and got my shoes back on before she finally dropped her hand. She sighed. Apparently for her, or for her future, that boy was a very important figure. It was like if I traveled back in time and met a towering historical figure in the Edo period. That much I knew without having to ask. And that whoever he was, it would probably be classified information. I let a sigh escape myself, the sigh of having accomplished my mission. This was the last thing I had to do with Asahina. The empty can prank, the gourd-shaped stone, the mysterious data storage device, and the turtle. The problem was, I didn't really know what to do next. It had been written on letter 6. I could rest easy as long as Asahina stayed at Tsudiya's apartment and didn't go wandering around. If she just stayed like that for 2 more days, she'd be able to catch up with her own original timeline. Then, in exchange, I would have to instruct the current Asahina to travel back in time, but that would happen the day after tomorrow. For now, I felt like a load had just been taken off my back. Asahina, I know you just got here, but let's head back to Tsudiya's place. We'll catch a cab and I'll escort you back. After that, I gotta get back to the library. Nagato's waiting for me.
Okay.
Asahina started walking a bit absent-mindedly. It led us down to a road that ran alongside the row of cherry trees. As we stood there on the road's shoulder waiting for a taxi, Asahina said little, and she seemed rather depressed. As I waited for a cab to pass by, I took another look around, wondering if the stranger from yesterday was going to show up again. He was obviously malicious, but that was the problem. He was too over the top. He needed to improve his game. To be completely honest, I wasn't the least bit scared of him. If someone like Koizumi had approached us yesterday instead, that would have been much more frightening. It was a mistake in either direction or casting. Ha ha! I found myself impressed with my own reliable disposition. And it was true, wasn't it? Throughout the past year, I've been involved in unthinkable, astounding events, and every time I learned something new. I'm sure I'd been shaken before, but now things were different. I wasn't at Nagato's level yet, but I had enough time to develop an unshakable core. I'd no longer worry about my own place in the world. No taxi had come yet. Indeed, there were a few cars of any kind on the road. I was happy to stand there and loiter for a while beside Asahina, but having sent Nagato off for the library alone, I needed to get to her as soon as I could. Maybe it was my fault for letting my mind wander so idly. The next moment, I witnessed something unbelievable. I hadn't checked my watch. There hadn't been an opportunity. I didn't know the exact time, but it was definitely before 11 o'clock. The incident played out like this. As Asahina and I stood there on the left side of the road, dazedly watching for a taxi, a minivan approached us slowly. This wasn't a highway, so the vehicle's slow speed itself didn't strike me as strange, and I paid it no mind. But as soon as the van decelerated even more, and although there were no traffic signal in sight, it came to a complete stop, directly in front of us. I'm not sure if I even had the time to think, what? Because it was barely a split second later that the sliding door of the minivan suddenly opened, and arms reached out from within the car and grabbed Asahina's body, pulling her into the vehicle. By the time I realized that the cry had come from Asahina, the moss green minivan had accelerated away, its exhaust blasting into me as though mocking me, sliding door still open, and disappeared into the distance. What? It took a couple of seconds before I recovered from my stupor. The van was gone. Wait just a second. What the hell is this? Asahina had disappeared right before my eyes. She'd been pulled into a van, and the van was already out of sight, and here I was, standing alone on the edge of the road. What was going on? Holy shit, a kidnapping. And right before my eyes, I had been standing right next to her. She had been close enough that I could have reached out my hand or simply grabbed onto her. She had been next to me just a few seconds ago, and now she's gone. How could something so ridiculous actually happen? God damn it, what the fuck? I hadn't been so freaked out since last December, when I realized that Haruhi wasn't in my class anymore, and sitting behind me instead of her was Asakura. Shit! Had it been that bastard from yesterday? Was this his doing? If it was, I underestimated him. Had his appearance and attitude been a setup to get me to let my guard down? If it had all been a ruse to distract me? Asahina! A loud noise assaulted my eardrums. It wasn't the sound of the wind through the cherry blossoms. It was the sound of the blood rushing through my head. I whipped my phone out. I had to get somebody, anybody to help me. If they'd help me get Asahina back, I didn't care who they were. The police, fire department, self-defense force, chamber of commerce, anything. My fingers moved automatically, and the phone was ringing before I even knew who I dialed. They picked up immediately. What's up, Kyon? It was Haruhi's voice. In the moment, I'd been so flustered that I called Haruhi. By this time, I was far past rationality. Haruhi, we're in trouble. Asahina's been kidnapped, I shouted. Huh? What are you talking about? Haruhi's voice was entirely calm. My stomach churned and I yelled into the phone again. I told you! Asahina's been kidnapped! We've got to help her!
Listen, Kyon,
Haruhi began almost kindly.
I don't know what you're getting at, but if you're going to start making prank calls, you're gonna have to do a lot better than that. I mean, really? Are you kidding me? Mikuru's been with me the whole time. And if you said it was Yuki, that would have made more sense.
No, it's not Nagato, it's Asahina, she's... I started, but then I realized it was futile. That's right, Asahina was with Haruhi. That Asahina was the original one, not the one who appeared in the broom closet, who now had been taken away in a car.
That's 1 point off for you, Kyon, which is less than you deserve for such a lame prank. And by the way, jokes are supposed to be funny. Okay, bye, stupid Kyon.
Wait! She hung up. My hand shook as I held my cell phone. A situation where every second counts was no time to be calling Haruhi. I'm such an idiot. If I had an urgent message to deliver, I should have called. My phone started to ring. I hit the talk button without bothering to check who it was. Hello? It was Koizumi's voice. Before I could say anything, he started talking. Don't worry, I got away from Haruhi and the others before I called. I told them I was going to the bathroom. Who cared about that? That didn't matter. What was important was... Koizumi, it's Asahina, she's... I understand the situation. Leave it to me. They'll be with you shortly. Who will be with me? Almost giddy, I looked up and see a car stopping right in front of me. It was a black taxi. I couldn't tell what the cab company it was from, but it seemed familiar. I'd ridden a similar cab once, when I was taken to see the Celestials. The back door of the car opened.
Please get in, hurry.
The passenger sitting in the back seat beckoned me into the cab. I leaped in. There was a familiar passenger in the back seat of this familiar car. The door behind me closed as I had time to take in the situation, and the sudden G-forces pressed me into the seat's back.
We'll catch them soon,
said a crisp, clear voice behind me. A voice I've heard before. I'll never forget her voice. Not after the many times she bailed us out in the past year. Mori? Sono Mori?
My apologies for being so long out of contact.
It's only been a month. That wasn't long out of contact. And anyway, what was Mori doing here? And not wearing her maid outfit, but instead a totally ordinary set of office clothes. Mori gave her usual calm smile.
Didn't Koizumi explain? I am also a member of the agency. The maid disguise is only for when I'm working with you and your friends.
My eyes went to the driver, at which Mori spoke as though to put me at ease.
Not just me, him as well.
Arakawa. Indeed, said the middle-aged butler who excelled at cooking and, apparently, high-speed cab driving. To kidnap such a lovely young lady, it's a disgrace. We won't let them get away. He stomped down on the accelerator, pushing me still harder into the seat. Riding in a car traveling at a tremendous speed was terrifying, but it was also helping to thaw my shock-frozen brain. Mori and Arakawa. I knew the two of them were Koizumi's cohorts, and that the maid and the butler roles were just part-time jobs for them, but I never expected to meet them like this, their car arriving immediately after Asahina had been kidnapped, as though they expected it. Oh, now I understand. You knew this was going to happen, I managed to say. You and Koizumi knew that Asahina was going to be kidnapped. That's why you were standing so close.
No,
said Mori, smiling like a female version of Koizumi.
It wasn't you that we'd marked, it was them. When we saw their car approach you, we were unsure what they would do. Their actions surprised us as much as they did you.
What do you mean by them?
Koizumi didn't explain that either. Asahina's kidnappers are from an organization that opposes the agency.
It didn't really matter who they were. I wouldn't let them get away with this, whether they were time travelers or espers. Why'd they take her of all people?
They acted rashly. No doubt they want to secure a privileged position in the future while they still can.
Privileged? I asked.
Yes, I expect they plan to use her to bargain with the future. However, they've made a mistake. They should have kidnapped the Mikuru Asahina who is now with Koizumi.
Mori explained the absurdity like it was nothing special.
It was a sloppy plan. They must be desperate. We need to know what has made them need to move so quickly.
That weirdo from before appeared suddenly too. Another time traveler. Was this because of his appearance? Mori seemed to agree, as though having read my mind.
They seem to have joined forces in earnest. We cannot allow this.
So is the agency... I wanted to say my, but somehow restrained myself. Is it our ally?
Our goal is to maintain the status quo. Is that not enough?
It was precisely enough. But what were the bastards who had kidnapped Asahina thinking? I asked. And what were they? If they weren't our allies, were they enemies? What kind of people were they?
They consist of an organization that opposes the agency, a group of time travelers who oppose Mikuru Asahina, and a cosmic entity other than the one that created Yuki Nagato,
said Mori plainly.
We knew they would interfere soon, having heard Koizumi's report regarding the Snow Mountain late last year. It was conceivable that they would join forces. Rather, it was inevitable. There's a significant potential payoff in gambling on Haruhi Suzumiya. They might lose everything, but they stand to gain much.
Bouncing and swaying, the black cab flew through the railroad crossing without stopping, and then threaded through an S-curve, barely so much as slowing down, tires squealing.
As does Koizumi, and you and your friends.
I was starting to feel carsick. So you knew about the other Asahina? You knew that she'd come back from 1 week in the future, and that she was holed up at Tsudia's place?
It is likely that without her, the original Mikuru Asahina would have been kidnapped, before Haruhi Suzumiya's very eyes.
That was the worst possible scenario. There was no telling what Haruhi would do. Which means... It meant that the Asahina who'd come from the future had been kidnapped instead of the current Asahina. In other words, her future self had saved her past self. Was that why Mikuru Asahina had to come? I could have carried out all the instructions in Asahina the Elder's letters on my own. So what had been the meaning of the things I'd done with Asahina? The other group of time travelers, the turtle and the boy, and the kidnapping. Only the Asahina the Elder knew everything. A strange emotion settled over me.
Don't lose them, Arakawa,
said Mori. Understood. Their exchange brought my attention front and center. The moss green car was in view. Both vehicles were still traveling at a high speed. Given the way we were going, it wouldn't have been surprising if we got into 3 or 4 accidents by now, but Arakawa's driving technique was as good as any rally racer's. He was no ordinary butler. The kidnapper's car seemed to be heading for the mountains. If we kept going, we'd soon reach the forest park where we shot our movie, then keep heading north. Past that, there was little but mountain roads and a few people or buildings. Damn, what were they planning to do with Asahina here? I wouldn't let them get away with it. I glared at the rear end of the van ahead of us, the moss green minivan. It looked just like the one from before, the vehicle that had nearly run over the boy in glasses. There was no mistaking it. Whoever was in that van, they weren't our allies. Still driving at an insane speed, the kidnapper's van swerved off the paved roadway and into a true mountain road. Arakawa pulled on the steering wheel and followed. The road seemed to have been forcibly carved out of the cliff. It was barely wide enough for 2 cars to pass each other, and there was no guardrail. The driver slipped up, we'd wind up tumbling to the foot of the mountain. I never thought I'd be in a high-speed car chase before, but I wasn't level-headed enough to appreciate that fact. All I could focus on was how badly I wanted to beat the crap out of the kidnappers. A cell phone started ringing, as if to throw cold water on the flames of my fighting spirit. It wasn't my phone, though. Mori took her own phone out and put it to her ear. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like a man's voice. Mori was silent for a while, listening.
Understood. According to the plan, then.
She replied simply, then raised her elegant voice and directed at the driver's seat.
Arakawa, just a bit farther.
Very well, said Arakawa in a reliable-sounding tone, nodding. He downshifted, revving the engine. There was no chance for me to ask what they were planning to do. Whoa! We were approaching a bow-like curve in the unpaved road. A police car appeared ahead, coming towards us around the bend. It slammed on its parking brake and executed a perfect drift turn, coming to a stop in the middle of the road, totally blocking the way. With nowhere to go, the minivan braked hard, kicking up a cloud of dust as it skidded. My blood ran cold when one of its wheels seemed to go over the edge of the cliff, but the kidnapper's driver was pretty good, managing to force the car back on course, where it completed a full spin and an additional half revolution. The van's nose faced the mountainside as it came to a stop alongside the police car. Arakawa executed a similar, if slower, maneuver, bringing the black cab to a sideways-facing stop. The minivan was trapped. The only place it could go was off the edge of the cliff.
Arakawa, stand by there,
said Mori, then opened her door and stepped out to the mountain road. I followed, but just as I was about to dash over to the minivan, Mori grabbed my arm. She stopped me with a sharp glance, then called out to the van in a clear voice.
Turn off your engine and step out of the vehicle. You still have time.
Her tone was polite as ever, but it had a different timbre to it than the one I remember from the island mansion and Tsudia's mountain villa. An officer got out of the police car. When I looked at the smartly uniformed figure, I was stunned. Underneath the policeman's cap was the youthful face of the younger Tamaru brother, Yutaka. He gave me a thumbs up. Still in the driver's seat of the patrol car was his older brother, Keiichi, who met my eye and nodded. Had these been the people Mori was on the phone with?
Release Asahina Mikuru! You have failed! There is no need to continue this!
Mori's clear voice brought my attention back to the van. Its windows were tinted, so I couldn't make out the interior. Unable to contain my impatience, I was just about to run over and give it a kick or something, when the idling engine fell silent, and the moss-green sliding door began to move. It was opening so slowly, though, that I wondered if they intended to resist. But when the kidnappers revealed themselves, my eyes went wide at their appearance. The group that emerged from the van was not comprised of tough-looking criminals or soldiers, but normal-looking young men and women just like you'd see walking around town. The fact that there wasn't a vicious-looking one among them made me even more worried. All those thoughts were blasted away as soon as I saw Asahina slumped inside the van. The last kidnapper to emerge carried her out. Her body was slack, evidently unconscious. I'd never forgive them. Before I could run at them, Mori stopped me again.
You must know this already, but I'll say it again. If you so much as leave a single scratch on her...
My body went slack at the sight of her cold expression. I never dreamed of a beautiful woman's smile could be so terrifying. Haruhi had an angry grin she sometimes used, but this was on an entirely different level. Perhaps sensing my fear, Mori turned to me and gave me her normal maid-like smile, then focused her attention on the idiotic kidnappers once again.
Leave peacefully. We will allow you to go free. Return to your organization and go where you like. Otherwise...
Mori's smile turned still more threatening, making me dizzy. If I had been one of those kidnappers, I would have been petrified. The unconscious girl slumped back and down, leaning against the van's tire. The kidnappers saved themselves by handing her over very carefully. If they just shoved my lovely Asahina off, I probably would have charged towards them, raising a cry, fists at the ready.
We will have your vehicle sent out to you later. Leave the area on foot.
Mori pointed at the cliff's edge, indicating that they should climb down from there. It wouldn't be impossible, but descending without any climbing equipment would certainly be difficult. It served them right.
Oh well,
said one of the kidnappers, sounding cheerful enough that I wonder if she really understood her own position.
I guess I expected this. Too bad, though. Maybe it was fate after all.
She was the only woman in the group, and the only one who'd set Asahina down. When I looked more closely at her, she seemed to be in her mid-teens. Age-wise, she wasn't far from me. The woman pierced me a brilliant smile.
Hello there. Sorry to these circumstances, but I'm honored to finally meet you. I'd hope to properly introduce myself someday.
She gave a signal to her cohorts in her body language. Leaving their female companion behind, the cohorts seemed not at all reluctant to go. The last of them looked about college age, and he conscientiously closed the van door before he went, then headed to the near perpendicular edge of the cliff. One by one, they disappeared down into the forest. Neither Mori nor Yutaka seemed to want to catch any of them. I wanted to run immediately over to Asahina, but Mori again took my arm and wouldn't let go. I heard a giggle. It was the kidnapper woman.
You don't have to worry. We did no harm to your little time traveler in the slightest. She's only sleeping because of the tranquilizer we gave her, and I doubt she'll even remember what happened. She fell asleep so quickly it surprised even us. Has she gotten used to being knocked out?
The woman, girl, was still composed, even with her cohorts gone. How long was Mori gonna let her get away with that? These guys are kidnappers. What about the Tomorrow Brothers? If they're gonna dress like cops, they should at least have a set or two of handcuffs. I was just about to voice my protest when the sliding door of the supposedly empty minivan was opened again from the inside. Oh, what a pain. A man's face popped out, with a smile 5 times more malicious than anything I'd seen from Koizumi. You got us way too easily. It was so easy to steal Sleeping Beauty here that I wish we held on to her just a little longer. This is just gonna backfire on us now. He made no move to leave the van, simply leaning back in his seat. It was him, the guy from yesterday, the other time traveler, whose appearance seemed so strangely significant. This too was predetermined. Us for as well. So I don't really care.
You should leave too,
said Mori in a kind big sisterly voice, smiling with lips with the petals of a poisonous flower.
Or do you plan on stay for a while? We'll be happy to prepare you a bed.
I won't waste your time. The bastard looked down at Asahina, snorting, then turned his malicious eyes to me. This wasn't a failure. It's historical fact. You all did very well. You and Asahina too. Tell me, is it fun being made to dance like that? Count me out. I'm sick of just playing a part.
Oh, are you really?
It was the kidnapper girl.
So how much of the future is decided then? It takes some skill to follow the path that leads to the correct outcome, doesn't it? Anyone can dance, but dancing correctly is quite difficult. You go right ahead and dance then. I wasn't counting on help from you people anyway. Is that so?
Said the girl, amused.
That may be fine for you, but we are not assembling at the same place. Let's join forces.
The bastard's face twisted in annoyance, and he glared at me again. I wanted to tell him that he was going to have to do better than that. Hari had got me used to being glared at. If you wanted the staring contest, I'd take him on any day. Maybe he sensed my anger. His face was full of loathing. Fools! All of you. You don't understand anything. Your ignorance is terrifying. He put his hand on the door handle and gave me one last parting line. I will come again. You will see me many times. It's ridiculous, but it's my duty. He closed the van door. Evidently that's all he had to say. Mori was still, continuing to stare right at the kidnapper girl, and I took my cue from her. The unnamed kidnapper girl stood there smiling, then went over to the van, as though suddenly remembering something, and opened the door. I already knew there'd be no one inside. The interior of the car was empty. That malicious jerk was nowhere to be seen. I didn't know if he used teleportation or time travel, but either way, I was happy he was gone.
Okay, I'll be going as well.
The girl dusted off her hands as though having finished her work, and looked down at the mountain road.
I suppose I'll be back. Oh, feel free to take care of the car. You didn't return it. It's yours.
Thank you, replied Mori, finally letting go of my arm. I dashed towards Asahina like a mother bird returning to the nest where she left her babies. Asahina! I lifted her up. The soft sound of her breath and periodic rising of her chest were proof that she was still alive. I gave one last angry glare in the direction of the kidnappers, but the girl had already started making her way down the cliff. Mori leaned over beside me, drawing close to Asahina's sleeping face. She put a finger to Asahina's neck and brought her lips close to the unconscious girl's mouth.
She is unhurt. I expect she'll wake in a couple hours. Please, take her to the car.
I carried her, of course. I was well used to carrying Asahina around. It was the one job I didn't want anyone else doing for me. We returned to the black taxi. Arakawa gave Asahina a fond look as though she were his own grandchild, then regarded me similarly. I relaxed my arms and let Asahina gently come to rest in the car's back seat. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I was elated about getting her back. When I thought about what it would have been like if they'd gotten away, no, I didn't want to think about it, and it couldn't have happened anyway. It must have been nice to be Asahina the Elder and believe in predetermined events. For her to do something like this, it must have been absolutely necessary in order for this Asahina to even truly become her. Right, Asahina? I continued to gaze at my younger-seeming older classmate, not noticing when Mori got back into the car, nor saying anything to the Tomorrow Brothers. I only came out of my reverie when the car began to move.
Where shall we go?
Mori asked me, and only then did I realize that the taxi was heading back down the highway we came up from before. The library. At the moment, I just wanted to see Nagato's face and calm down. I sat back in the seat. feeling about as exhausted as Asahina looked. I thought my work was done once I put the turtle in the water, then retrieved it, but the fact that Asahina's kidnapping awaited soon after was more than just unexpected. Despite my psychological exhaustion, I managed to move my mouth and speak. Mori, have those guys always targeted Asahina? Have there been failed kidnapping attempts all along? Are there going to be more?
She will not be kidnapped in this time period.
Well, then, what was it that just happened?
I believe that what I'm saying is correct. Her current self is completely unharmed. After all, someone else was kidnapped in her stead.
Mori's face was filled with affection.
Mikuru Asahina enjoys the protection of many. Yours, Yuki Nagato's, and even ours. We are all alike that we don't wish to hand her over to anyone.
Just as I trusted Koizumi, I supposed I could trust Mori.
As for the rest, I suggest you ask your lovely maid, the older one, from farther in the future.
That much was obvious. I exhaled, then voiced the sudden question that came to mind. Mori, are you Koizumi's superior? Something about the way you talk makes me think so. Mori giggled and smiled with a strangely ageless smile.
You needn't concern yourself with that. We're like a company. All the employees are quite close and don't stick to formalities, not even with the company president.
I could tell she was dodging the question, but the truth was I wasn't very interested in the internal hierarchy of the agency. If I really wanted to know, I would just lean on Koizumi to tell me. He probably wouldn't tell me the truth, but then again, neither would Mori. If he wanted to tell me, Koizumi wouldn't wait for me to ask before delivering a whole spiel. Maybe that was the agency's style of doing things. He'd give me an earful eventually. That much was certain. All I had to do was wait. I got out of the taxi in front of the library, and with Mori's help got the still sleeping Asahina safely situated on my back.
Take care, until we meet again,
she said with a smile that came right out of her maid era. Arakawa gave me a silent bow, and the black taxi sped away, heading north up the highway. I wondered if it had been Arakawa in the driver's seat when Koizumi took me to see the Celestials. I'd have to ask about that, and thank him too. Arakawa and the Tamaru brothers both. Heading to the library's entrance with Asahina on my back, I saw Nagato waiting for me there. She stood stock still, apparently unaffected by the cold.
I am glad she is unhurt,
said Nagato, before I could say anything. Her crystalline eyes regarded at Asahina, whose cheek rested on my shoulder.
I heard what happened.
From whom? I asked. Koizumi? Nagato shook her head slowly, then even more slowly held a hand out to me. She was holding an envelope. Beside the fancy design on it, there was a single handwritten numeral. Number 5. The missing message had been delivered to Nagato. I hardly had to ask who the sender was, but Nagato told me.
Mikuru Asahina's temporal variant. We met roughly 1 hour ago.
So Asahina the Elder had been here, but to think she'd go to Nagato. Well, what'd she say?
She said to take care of herself,
said Nagato simply, then reached out with her index finger and touched Asahina on the forehead.
What?
It was a magic touch. Asahina's eyes blinked open.
What? Kyon? Huh? Why are you carrying... Oh, Nagato!
Shamisen struggled the same way when someone picked him up. Asahina had started squirming immediately upon wakening, and although I would have been happy to carry her a bit longer, she seemed unlikely to calm down, and Nagato was watching. I let Asahina down. According to what Mori had said, the tranquilizer was supposed to keep Asahina asleep for 2 hours, but perhaps because of something Nagato did, Asahina seemed perfectly steady once her feet were on the ground. Her eyes were a bit red at the corners. Asahina looked up at me.
What happened to me? We gave the turtle to the boy, and then all of a sudden there was a car, and it stopped, and...
Apparently she'd been given the tranquilizer immediately thereafter. She didn't remember anything, so I explained the rest. As the story progressed, her face went from pale to flushed, and when I finished the tale of the car chase, she smiled, much to my surprise.
So that's what happened. I guess even I could be useful sometimes. I managed to protect my other self in this timeline.
Asahina's straightforward smile blasted all the psychological fatigue out of me. She was right. If it hadn't been for Michiru Asahina, the kidnappers would have resorted to more extreme methods to capture Asahina the Younger. They may have done it right in front of Haruhi. Koizumi and his comrades would have tried to stop them without worrying about the consequences, but that would have been a terrifying turn of events. Haruhi would be shocked, and Koizumi's agency could hardly stand by and do nothing, but even our enemies would realize that. Now, they couldn't get away with kidnapping even the comparatively harmless Michiru Asahina. We managed to get Asahina back without relying on Nagato. I bet our antagonists were well aware of what might have happened if she had been involved. If they wanted to be our enemies, I looked forward to seeing them get the treatment they deserved.
Oh, that letter!
Asuhina's eyes fell upon envelope number 5.
When did it?
Just a while ago. It was for Nagato, I said.
For Nagato?
Her long eyelashes fluttering, Asuhina addressed her petite fellow brigade member.
Nagato, who was it that gave you this letter? Was it?
I cannot say, came Nagato's flat refusal. The expressionless alien continued, as though to remind Asuhina. You will understand eventually. Asuhina's mouth opened, and she froze. You of all people should understand that, added Nagato, in a voice that sounded like a snow sculpture given life. I guess I wasn't the only one who wanted to remind Asuhina that it wasn't that we didn't want to tell her, is that she should have known without asking. I suddenly felt strangely uncomfortable, sandwiched between the two silent girls, so I opened the letter and read it. The contents of letter 5 were as follows.
This is the end. Please tell your Mikuru Asuhina to return to her original temporal posting. You are free to choose the time designation, and location as well, if you like. Do as you will.
Do as you will, huh? I wouldn't mind hearing that phrase under different circumstances, just once. From the original Asuhina, of course. Of course, since this is the me we're talking about, even if that wish were granted, I'd probably just stand there and faint dead anyway. Sleeping soundly until Haruhi came along to pound wakefulness into me. I wasn't like Haruhi. I wouldn't wish for the Earth's rotation to reverse. It was better just seal wishes that you didn't actually want to come true. The world was best left as it is. Which is why we had to send Asuhina back. I placed my hand on the shoulder of the dazed-looking Asuhina and showed her letter 5. She seemed to be more concerned about the sender's identity than the content, but she read it thorough to the end, her face showing her acceptance.
I understand. I finished what I needed to do.
She then continued, sounding a bit lonely.
But it was an indirect order. If it hadn't come through you, I wouldn't have been able to return my own time.
Her sad expression soon disappeared, though, and she smiled.
Someday, I'm going to be able to do all this on my own. You'll see. That's when I'll come and save you, Kyon, and everybody else. I don't know when it'll happen, but surely.
Her wish would come true, so long as she didn't lose sight of her resolve in that moment. I glanced down at my watch. So about the time we'll return you to. This Asuhina had appeared in the broom closet 6 days earlier at 3:45 p.m., and at the time she explained she'd come from 8 days in the future at 4:15 p.m., thus her correct temporal posting was 2 days from now at 4:15. Any time before that, and her situation wouldn't be any different than how it was at this moment. We wanted to avoid another instance of two Asuhinas existing simultaneously. A 62-second time lag would do nicely. 2 days from now will be Tuesday. Shall we say 4:16 in the afternoon? That way only 1 minute will pass without your existence. That same place should work. We'll send you right back to the club room's broom closet.
That sounds fine, since you're the only person in the room then, Kyon,
said Asuhina. Uniform and school slippers, said Nagato, reminding me. This Asuhina was wearing things she borrowed from Nagato. Her school uniform was back at Tsudiya's house, but if I went with her to get him now, I'd miss the scheduled rendezvous with the rest of the brigade. And I didn't like the idea of sending Asuhina back to fetch him alone either. Let's do this. You go back to your correct time in those clothes, and I'll get your uniform and shoes from Tsudiya later today, and we'll, figure something out.
I will leave that to you then. Oh,
Asuhina bowed, then looked up at me seriously, opening her mouth, then shutting it as though having forgotten what she wanted to say. I wonder if it was my imagination that she seemed to be worried about Nagato.
It's nothing. We'll talk about it after I get back.
It bothered me, but it probably wasn't too important. If it was something I didn't need to know about for 2 days, I wouldn't worry about it. I would have not minded Asuhina activating her time travel mechanism right here on the spot, but she didn't want to be seen doing it. She wanted a place where she could be alone. We went into the library and escorted Asuhina to the girls' bathroom.
Kyon, thank you for everything. I really should be thanking Koizumi and Tsudiya too.
She could tell Koizumi anytime, but Mori would have to be thanked whenever we met her next. As for Tsudiya, I said, she probably already understood, but I'd make sure to thank her too.
Well then, Kyon, Nagato, I'll see you soon.
Reluctant to say goodbye right up to the end, Asuhina sighed and entered the bathroom. I heard the sound of a stall door closing, but no further foley reached my ears after that. Nagato looked up quietly. She has disappeared from current space-time, she explained. It was over then. All I had to do now was wait 2 days. I left the library with Nagato and heaved a deep sigh. Hey, Nagato. Asuhina and I had met a time traveler from a different faction and a group that opposes Koizumi's organization.
I see.
Yeah, so I was thinking maybe the other aliens are also around.
Are you afraid?
Nagato asked, her gaze perfectly still. I offered her her own answer.
I am not afraid.
You got that right, Nagato. I had the same opinion. I bet Asahina and Koizumi would agree with me too. Us birds of a feather had to get along, I said. Nagato faced silently ahead, and I closed my mouth and continued to walk. I knew full well that I didn't have to come right out and say something so obvious. The SOS Brigade wasn't a group of people. It was a single unit. There was no need to explain that to the person who had long since understood that far better than I ever had.